Hi, welcome to the channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm going to talk about a second scenario or explanation for the current events happen in Europe. I know I've made a video before about this, and if I repeat a lot of stuff, then unfortunately it is like that because it is basically an idea in progress. And the more you think about this and the more you find information, the more you would like to develop that idea. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Welcome back to the channel where we will provide an alternative view to the common narrative. And let me start straightforward. This whole matter about Russia, Ukraine was not, did not start in February 2023. It did not even start in 2014. It started actually with the collapse of the Soviet Union 30 years ago. There is also multiple groups that are driving the world events, or world affairs if you want to call it. There are the fanatics, the patriots in America that are actually hating the Soviet Union. Then there are the people in Europe that have always looked down on the Russians and hate the Russians per se. And then there are the people in Europe and America that's always thought that Russia never belonged to the European Union or the European Western world, including America, and that they should not be recognized as that. And we know about the multiple wars that the world has experienced in Europe in the last 100 years or more. And it's more about a self-interest and their own building their own empires and so on. I recently read to you a speech that was of 1941. It's obvious who said it, but I cannot say the name. But if you look at the contents and if you replace the name with today's main actors and countries, then you will notice that the world hasn't changed a lot. We still have the same problems. We still have the same aspirations of certain countries to conquer the world. There are still people that believe they are superior to other people. And they force other countries into certain situations that they have to act militarily in order to protect themselves. And you can make the direct connection between those years and now the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. But you have to be a little bit tolerant and not let you get your born-in propaganda type of history prevent you from seeing the reality. There's something what really bothers me about this, and this is the other faction. The faction that is really actually discussed, and which I start to believe more and more is the driver behind the current world affairs. And that is the money. The people that control the money. And that control America and ensure that America is the financial, industrial, and military empire in the world. The money that controls affairs in other countries in order to ensure that the living style of America is far superior to the rest of the world, and that the rest of the world supports him in that respect. Now that has only started basically with the Second World War. The Second World War was very beneficial for America. They just came out of the Great Depression, as did Britain and France and so on. Germany was already a long time out of it. And America allowed Europe to destroy itself, and America supplied all the weapons to the two countries in Europe in order to allow them to destroy each other. And then in the final, when the war was basically won, they did enter this theater together with the war against Japan. And they paid actually a very little price for that. As far as I remember, only 450,000 Americans died in the Second World War, total, even the Pacific. Now compare that against the Russians, the Germans, and the British and the French. How many soldiers did they lose? A hell of a lot more. But again, before even the war was finished, in 1944, America already assembled Axis power, not the Axis, the Allied powers, and they established basically, or made an agreement and said, listen here, our economy is the biggest economy now in the world. Yours is destroyed. We're going to do this financial system, and we're going to use the dollar as a world currency, and the dollar is going to be backed by gold. And that was the Bretton Woods One agreement. And that is basically how the dollar was created as a dominant force. And everybody agreed because everybody was weak and Americans were the strongest. And, oh yes, okay, we can do that. Until 1991-92, where the Americans had spent too much money and they couldn't pay their debt back in gold. Well, in the meantime, in order to get gold, to get the dollars, which the countries needed, they swapped their gold for dollars. And that's where they transported all their gold to Fort Knox. That's why the German 3,000 tons of gold is basically stored in America, and they can't get it back. But in any case, so then we had the Bretton Woods, the so-called Bretton Woods agreement, and that is when Nixon decoupled the dollar from the gold price and made the dollar a pure fiat country. Well, at that stage, it was like chaos in the world, again, economically wise. And everybody accepted that because what else could they do? But the dollar basically lost its value, and then the Americans came up with a plan. And then they talked to Saudi Arabia, and they convinced Saudi Arabia, together with all their friends, to only sell the oil in dollars. And, well, that's where we have a petrodollar. But in exchange, America had to basically station troops in Saudi Arabia and try to destroy Iran. And that's when America started to fund Saddam Hussein in Iraq, to start the war against Iran, and etc., etc. We know the history about that. And but the other condition is that the oil sheikhs and so on all had to recycle their dollar in America by buying American treasuries and debt and so on. And that was basically how the dollar was stabilized again. And so it went on and on and on, and later on America started to abuse the dollar again, and we now have the sanctions and the control of SWIFT and weaponization of the dollar, and oh no, that's not acceptable. That's put a lot of fear into people, so it destabilized the dollar again. And then when they wanted to move away, then they had the attack again on Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria and etc. And now we have the confiscation of the Russian reserves and the confiscation of Venezuelan gold and money and Afghanistan money and Iraqi money and Libyan gold and so on. But again, America abused its position. But unfortunately, in the meantime, America has piled up 31 trillion US dollar in terms of debt. And the economy is not growing. And even if you believe the American economy is growing, then you are either blind or you are naive, because the numbers that the Americans are basically telling you are all lies. You can check it up by using the proper statistics. It's like they say always, unemployment in America is a lot higher than what is reported, because the government doesn't count the people that have given up looking for work. It's again like inflation. They change their baskets of goods in order to calculate inflation. When it becomes too expensive, then they change the goods in the basket to make it lower. Now, these are all known facts. It's not a conspiracy theory. These are, you can look it up. But apart from that is that America has a lot of liabilities in terms of future expenditures. Those are about 200 trillion, like pension funds and medical aids and stuff like that for their future. It's like they have commitments that they have to pay to their citizens, and that amounts about $200 trillion. And then we had the bubble in 2008, and they had artificially supported it and printed money, and now people are starting to not buy US treasury anymore. So this printing of money is also starting to reach the end of the road. And then we have a huge unknown problem, and that's the derivative market, which is, I believe, incredible big. So basically, the West America sits in a huge financial problem. And how does it get out of it? It knows it has lost the war. It cannot conquer Russia. It knows it cannot conquer China. Those are too big. Time is running out. They do realize that their military is not up to standard. They have spent a lot of money on stuff that doesn't work. Looking at the advanced weaponry of Russia, especially the missiles, technology, the electronic warfare, even some of the aircrafts and so on, they have lost basically the war in that respect. So they do realize they cannot win it. Their production facilities are gone. They can, like we all know, they cannot produce enough ammunition for Ukraine to expend on the battlefield. They have to source it from all over. But what are they doing? They're instigating violence and wars all over. And it doesn't make sense. And I don't understand why the other countries do comply with this and agree with the Americans, because cannot they see that they are being used? It's like Ukraine. Can Ukraine not see that it's being used as a proxy army that is sacrificing the blood of his people, his country, his economy? And although Europe, America has made him promises, they are feeding him minimal equipment. So it's not working. Why would Taiwan go and find trouble with China when he doesn't manufacture his own weapon systems, has it imported from America, and America is known now cannot supply it? Same goes for Japan. Why even start a war against a superpower like China, who has immense manufacturing capability, who has immense stockpiles of weapons, and compared what you can get from America is minuscule? So don't even start a fight. So then why is America antagonizing everybody? And Russia and China are showing a hell of a lot of it. Why did America destroy basically the Nord Stream pipeline? Because effectively it has, well, that's the narrative, which I don't fully agree, but let's say it is that it destroys the German industry and deindustrializes Germany. But since Germany is in any case the economic powerhouse of Europe, if it goes down, then the rest of Europe goes down. all the countries in Europe have huge inflation, huge energy costs. Yes, a little bit of gas that America now exports to Europe is not going to make America rich. That's small compared to the rest of the economy, the financialization or the financial sector. So why is America doing all this? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense from any military why would Olaf Scholz agree or allow the Nord Stream pipeline to be blown up? Why is Olaf Scholz allowing that Germany is drawn into this conflict? Why? And that comes to the first point of view. And that is that America realizes it has reached the end of the road. It will never be able to pay back all the debt, the principal debt. It will barely be able to pay for the interest on the debt. It has these huge liabilities. It has this huge liability of a risk in the credit market or in the derivative market, stock exchange. The whole financial system in America is stuffed. That's it. And it knows it. But how can it again survive it? And its aim is for a Bretton Woods 3 agreement. America believes that if Russia and Europe destroy each other in a war, then they are both weak and they cannot fight back. Same as on the end of the Second World War. If China is enticed into a war with Japan and Taiwan and maybe India, and as I said, India is a possibility, and if these countries destroy each other, then there's no more competition for America in terms of the Bretton Woods system. They are all too weak. And the rest of the world, like Africa and South America, they don't really count in terms of, they are not big enough to stand up like Russia and China. So in my opinion, or my, not opinion, but my alternative view to the whole matter is, it's not about the local battle between Ukraine and Russia and Europe and a little bit of America. It is the global collapse of the economic system as is in order to get rid of the debt. That is the end game, if you want to call it like that. Well, do the Americans, do the Russians understand it? I believe so. They are not idiots. Do the Chinese believe it? I believe so, yes. They are not idiots. And that is why there is an urgent actions to de-dollarize America, the world, and become independent from the dollar. Russia has now gotten rid of all its dollar reserves. The euro will in any case be destroyed because euro will be destroyed. So there's not a competition for the dollar. So Russia has gotten rid of their euros and dollars. So it's not exposed to those economies. It's converted most of its stuff into yuan and alternative currencies and gold. Then we have a look at China. China still has a lot of American treasuries, but that has to get rid of. But it is buying gold in order and exchange those not derivatives, no, but treasuries. Yeah, treasuries. Sorry. So China is going to get rid of their treasuries, and they will buy gold and pay that for energy and development in other countries, using their dollar reserves. And then also China has a lot of debt. And one wonders if it's not, that debt is not coupled to the US dollar somehow, somewhere. So should the dollar collapse, then that debt will also basically disappear. And they are working hard on this alternative monetary system, world reserve system, trading currencies. You know, doing a parallel development of the system to the US dollar. But unfortunately, everything takes time. Nothing happens overnight. The process accelerates, yes. It slowly begins and then it accelerates. Now, it has started a couple of years back already. It's now slowly accelerating. And it's going to accelerate a lot faster. But the problem is nobody knows how fast and at what stage we really are. So Russia and China is playing for time. America is playing for anti-time. It's like, yes, I know the pro-Russians always say, who's got the clock and so on, the Russians got a clock. The meaning, Americans, Europe, they don't have any time for, no, yes, if you talk about battle and the military aspects, yes, but not if it comes to the financial system. The Western's monetary system has no time. And the new system needs time. And the one is like, they want the financial economic collapse of the world to do the reset. Like I said, the reset button. And the other one is basically to be independent and not be affected by the reset button. So in my opinion, I think we may be 3 years away from that. But that's only a thumbsuck type of estimate. I don't really know. And the problem is I don't even know how to protect myself against that, or anybody. It's like I always say, you know, only the rich people can protect them. We poor people, our plebeians and so on, we cannot. It's like I'm standing on the beach and I'm seeing, here comes the tsunami. It's coming. And I tell to myself, but I can't do anything. I cannot run, it's going to catch me. I cannot get into my car, it's going to catch me. I cannot go to a house because the house is going to be washed away. And there is no high-rise flat anywhere near me. So what I can say is I can look at the tsunami and hope for the best. So that is basically my story for today. I don't see the military option as the real reason for everything that's happening in the world. I think that is the distraction. You remember the balloon shooting of the Chinese balloon was a distraction for the expose on the Nord Stream pipeline. Who done it? Simon Hirsch. Well, I believe the military action in Europe, that is a distraction for the real reason. And I've read some articles and I understand I'm not the only one that thinks like that. By the way, before I go, I just want to actually tell you, so this China economy. So 2022, last year, it was supposed to go very bad in China because of their COVID restrictions. And it actually is a fallacy. It actually went very, very good with the Chinese economy. Usually what the anti-Russian punters have said is that they would take, if there's a COVID case or lockdowns in one city, they would project it over the whole of China. But no, it was only in that city and only limited. So a lot of the information about the China and Chinese economy of last year is false. So I just want to read China's total international trade in 22 was a whopping $6.3 trillion. That is an upwards of 7.7% from 2021. Imports were about up by 4.3% and exports were up by 10.5%. The US-China trade Remember, sanctions, all stuff. But the US-China trade also hit a record. Bilateral trade with more than $700 billion. Bilateral trade. It will be all US imports from China. The US-China trade on track to break records. 800 billion. China had a record exports of 3.6 trillion last year. China had a record trade surplus of $877 billion. That's larger than the GDP of Turkey. Remember, that's a trade surplus. They have exported more than they imported by the whole of the GDP of Turkey. As China had a record IPO, that is registering of companies on the stock exchange. Chinese startups raised a record $92 billion, where the US, the US only managed to raise $9 billion for new companies, the IPOs. And that was a shocking down of 95% for the US. And China had a record FDI, which is foreign direct investment. That means foreign countries have invested in China in 2022, and it had a record of that, of $185 billion that foreign companies invested in China. So how does the Chinese economy now collapse? Or that's a fallacy. China had a record year for electrical vehicle sales. It exploded by 6.5 million vehicles. 60% of this global market share. Pure battery electric cars accounted for 20% of new car sales in 2022. Plug-in hybrid was another 5% of the job. The total stock of new energy vehicles is about 13 million cars in China. That is 13 million electrical cars. Even Tesla sold about 400,000 cars in China alone. China had a record number of Fortune 500 companies. There are 134 in the mainland of China. China had record space launches. It had 64 space launches in total last year. China's GDP in 2022 was $18 trillion, and this year it will strengthen by maybe 6%, and a real GDP growth of 7%. And the expected GDP of China in 2023 this year will be about $21 trillion. That will be their GDP, on par with the Americans. But not the debt. In 2022, China has achievements in many areas, building a space station, maintaining the #1 spot in the WPO patents. And this all in spite of effectively American sanctions against technology companies in China. And it has also convinced a lot of countries to do bilateral trade in yuan or in local currencies. So what it basically means is that China is going ahead and is successful. America is going backwards and downwards. And who's going to be first? Who's going to be when everything goes together? Crashes together. Actually, I hope it will be China. But we here in South Africa have so many other problems that we still have to resolve that before we can even talk about fearing international effects. Anyway, guys, that's my story for today. If you like what you heard, press the like button, subscribe, tell your friends, press the bell button. Until next time, cheers.